Okay, so welcome to the course. We start with a foundational chapter that really talks theoretically about laws and the structure thereof. All right. So we'll use the word law a good bit this semester. And when we use the word law, our laws, we're basically referring to rules governing interactions and relationships among individuals um, as it relates to each other, i.e., to you, to your classmates, to your other students on campus, between you and your professors, but also with you or every individual and their society as well. All right, and we'll flesh that out um, as we progress. And in the United States, we have a very complicated legal system. We have a system of common laws, which means that many different laws may affect a single transaction. And there is the possibility of conflict as well. We'll talk a little bit about conflict of laws in the class periods to come as well. But laws may come from many different sources, and they may affect a single transaction or a single action. All right. Okay. So we do need to understand that we exist in a system of common laws. And to say system of common law, you can say that it came over on the Mayflower, so to speak. The American legal system is very much influenced by the English legal system, and that should make some sense because the United States, America, was once a British colony until the American Revolution. There are some very pronounced differences. When we run across those, I'll be sure to draw attention to those. But both English and American law is a system of common laws, which really means that law can come from many sources. It can come from court decisions. It can come from statutes. It can come from established practices and norms. All right. The opposite of a system of common law is a system of civil laws. And civil law systems do exist. In fact, most of the continent of Africa exists in civil law, which really means that there is a documentation of absolutely everything that is legal or illegal. When you have legal questions in the United States, the answer is almost always get an attorney or ask an attorney. And that's because the system of common laws requires to really understand law. You have to do much more than be able to understand a statute. You have to understand court cases and precedents and established custom and practice and how they interplay. Okay, um, so early English courts included some principles that are still very relevant to us today. The first we'll talk about is stare decisis, which is a Latin phrase. There is a lot of Latin in law, but literally translated, it just means let the previous decision stand. Um, and the idea here is that if a decision is made in court based on a particular fact pattern, then the next time a similar fact pattern presents itself in that court, the decision should be the same. That way we have predictability and we can expect what the courts will do. That encourages settlement, that encourages, it gives you a good idea of what the law actually is. And we're talking about judge-made law, right? The results of court opinions. All right. So when we're talking stare decisis, you want to be. Let me see if I can. Yeah. All right. The it's binding in certain cases. So lower courts must follow decisions of higher courts. In other words, if something happens in a Hamilton County court, it's not necessarily precedent, or the Butler County in Ohio wouldn't necessarily have to follow that same decision. But if something happened in Ohio Appellate Court or the Ohio Supreme Court, then both Hamilton and Butler counties would be bound to respect that decision. And failure to do so would result in appellate the judge's decision being turned over on appeal. Right? If that's unclear, we'll talk about court structure and appeals in the class periods to come. All right. So the objective here is there's another bullet point here, but let me come back to that. So the objective here is that when we have stability and predictability from our legal system, the decisions of courts basically have the function and force of law. Right? Okay. And that is one of the checks and balances in our government. Okay. So here's the idea. Courts should not overturn their own decisions unless there's strong justification for the court doing so. So this is also a principle of the American legal system, but it's not absolute. All right, so we don't have to look far to find examples of the court overturning its own decisions, particularly the Supreme Court. Recently, the Supreme Court overturned Roe versus Wade, the constitutional right to abortion, which made, well, all it really did was said that there is no constitutional right to an abortion, and it's a state law question. All right. Prior to that, another big example of a court not respecting its own previous decision would have been Brown versus the Board of Education, which of course required the integration of schools and public facilities, which overturned Plessy versus Ferguson, which stated that separate but equal was law. All right, so those are some examples of courts overturning themselves due to social pressure, political pressure, or whatever reason may exist.